Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now September 16th of 2023. Now, I know a lot of you out there have been wondering about when is the Snow White trailer arriving. We already know that it was supposed to debut at D23. That did not happen because Disney had a lot of change in mind based on what was happening with the actual film, with the re-edits and the rearrangement of scenes. So now, right now, the overall plan is to debut the trailer during this holiday season. We're looking roughly around November to December, most likely around Thanksgiving, right around that time frame. Ironically, that's right when Rachel Zegler's Hunger Games prequel does arrive in theaters, by the way. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject. Now, we know that Rachel Zegler has said quite a number of dumb things about Snow White 1937 and her view of Snow White 2024 and Disney, etc., etc. And that brings us to director Marc Webb. Now, you guys may or may not know this guy, but he was mostly responsible for crafting things like The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 and 500 Days of Summer. Those are really his three big movies. Now, the biggest thing of all about Snow White is that we know that the backlash is only going to get worse. Any single time that Disney drops a promotional piece, whether it's a poster or whether it's a teaser or a trailer, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that they can do to escape this ongoing backlash as long as you have Zegler in this movie and as long as you have the 7 magical creatures that are not really the 7 dwarfs from Snow White. Now, let's get into exactly what's going on with Marc Webb, the director. Now, you guys all very well may know that Marc Webb actually had a very, complex production with Snow White. There was a lot of back and forths with this movie, a lot of different changes along the way. However, with Snow White 24 going through many issues right now, one major development has to do with the production of the film. With director Marc Webb, he went on to deliver the following to the world involving this movie. After working on the Spider-Man films and 500 Days of Summer, Disney wanted to do a retelling of Snow White. I got the call and immediately accepted the opportunity. We went through various cycles. There was a time when we were going to stay closer to the source material, but over the months, Disney wanted to reimagine the whole thing. So that got Greta and Erin, he's talking about the writers, to rework the whole script, and I think it came out fantastic. I would be lying if I had not seen the rising issues from the general public about this movie, and to that, all I can say is that these people are the types that can't get with the times and adapt to change. Did they really want the same old boring story to be retold again, where everything happens from start to finish? No, I don't think so. But there will always be a group that points the finger at you as a creator, whether it be a director or a writer. When Greta and Erin told me Disney wanted them to reimagine the story, I immediately said, alright, let's do this. I was thrilled. I knew, of course, there would be individuals that would be offended over what we were doing to elements of the story like the 7 dwarfs and even Snow White herself, let alone the core of the story as well. Now, let me just stop here quick about what Marc Webb is putting out there before I get to the next big piece. Now, the thing that really bothers me is the fact that he is essentially labeling the general public as people that can't get with the times, people that cannot adapt to a new story or to new times or whatever have you, whatever he's trying to get at. So basically he is pointing the finger at us, blaming that we are pointing the finger at him as a creator, where in reality, it really is, at the end of the day, what they are doing is wrong. The fact that they initially, and this is true, initially Disney had promised that Snow White 2024 was going to be a beat-for-beat retelling of the 1937 original, the actual original animated movie. And that never happened. It ended up being completely different. And look, at the end of the day, it's all about pop culture. I think that pop culture is something that should be defended in the world, and we know that this is what Disney is trying to devalue. They are trying to retell all of pop culture, whether it be, live action remakes from their animated counterparts, or doing things what they're doing with Star Wars and Marvel. to the point where they are trying now to get a grasp on the Alien franchise, where they have Alien Romulus coming out. That has a lot of fans worried as well. You know, they have their hands on a lot of franchises to the point where it makes you wonder to yourself who's next, or what's next, right? So, Marc Webb, again, labeling the fans as people that can't get with the times is just ridiculous. Now, let's move on to the next major thing about all of this. So he goes on to elaborate further. But they all need to realize that this was the only way to tell an original story that had value attached to it. We had our complications, of course, making this film. It was a tricky production, but you have to roll with the punches. Quite frankly, the people disgusted over this movie disgust me as a creator. It's just frankly the people that really like to point the finger again at creators that sicken me as an individual. It's just sickening, and people need to change and adapt to new pieces of art in this world. This is our modern spin of Snow White, and we believe most people will really enjoy this film. Well, you know, Mark, I don't think a lot of people are going to enjoy this film for several reasons. Number one, we saw the leaked photographs of, well, what Disney calls them now, the 7 magical creatures, no longer the 7 dwarfs per se, but we saw the leaked images of those characters, and people were just appalled, to the point where it literally hit the mainstream media. This thing was everywhere. This picture was everywhere to the point where almost any normal, common moviegoer saw what Snow White 2024 was all about, and I think that that's the reason why Disney is so frightened about this movie, is that it's not just the people going on the internet, like you guys watching this video right now, that are aware about the whole Snow White situation, but just regular people are fully aware about this movie and what's going on around it. And that could very well lead to it being the biggest box office failure of all time at Disney, perhaps maybe even the worst of all in general. I mean, that might be saying a lot, but it's possible. Now, the thing about Marc Webb, you know, he seems a little egotistical to me, quite frankly, actually, very egotistical. The fact that he is labeling individuals that they can't get with the times, and that if they were to retell the 1937 film, that would be boring. Look at what they did with the Marvel movies. Look what they did with, you know, a lot of other tales like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. They're all based on books. Everyone knows what's going to happen. What's the big deal? You know, I don't understand that. Just because you know what's going to happen, that suddenly makes it boring? I don't think so. You know, if you do a retelling beat for beat, except it's in live action, that's the grasp of the movie, you know, because you're seeing a retelling of it that's different. It's not animated. That's the overall reason why people would want to go ahead and see this. What they're doing, as in Disney, what they are doing is that they have people like Mark, Greta, etc. working on this thing that doesn't even feel like Snow White, reportedly. The test screenings were so negative, screeners did not even want to see this movie anymore, and it really makes you wonder to yourself what's going to happen once this movie hits theaters. So anyway, guys, drop a comment below, fill me below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Night to moon, we hear them moans again.